cannot. It's a flat top, and it can't roll. It's pressed against the Great Eurasian Plate. So what's happening is that Mexico is being pulled to the west as the Atlantic opens, and the seaway is splitting, which we know. Here in Wisconsin, we have the Green Bay hum and booms as Wisconsin is ripping open. And this puts the New Madrid area on a diagonal pull. When that gives, the west side of the Mississippi will drop, and the east side will sort of remain where it is. Would tear all the bridges along the Mississippi, and this is definitely in our future. It will happen before the pole shift, that kind of a rupture, and the west coast will adjust afterwards along the San Andreas. And the volcanoes along the west coast. That will be a secondary result, which is not to say that we won't have 5s, 6s, maybe 7s or whatever on the west coast, but this is considered minor, not the biggie that's going to happen when the New Madrid gives.
Would you say that with every passing day, people are beginning to recognize that something isn't right with our environment, and that changes are occurring quickly and more often, or are people still in a state of denial even after everything we have seen and witnessed lately?
They're beginning to they're becoming very worried, and have been for some years, but this is like a very subliminal, subconscious level. And it's been at least about 4 years, I think, that this has been under discussion, with people becoming more irritable, having more illness, getting cancer and dying off, or just having less immune system resistance. They because they know they're being lied to. They sense they're being lied to. If global warming is what's causing the huge storms we're having, and all the increase in tornadoes, and and the like, droughts and deluge so intractable, crop shortages causing a rise in food prices now. If this is going on, then why is, for instance, the Bush administration so darn casual about emissions? Oh, we're not going to change our way of life or bother our corporations. Well, if it's destroying our ability to grow crops and creating extreme droughts around the world, why aren't they concerned? And why isn't somebody rising up and pelting them with, tomatoes?
Well, I understand, too, they've been very lackadaisical when it comes to implementing specific laws regarding the environment. Like this is something that to them is not important.
They know it's not important, and their behavior is showing that they know it's not man-made, climate changes that they're worried about. They're showing that by their behavior. So people see this, and they're putting two and two together. We have a lot of distractions. This or that. Little Kaylee goes missing in Florida, and it's on the news, for several minutes every night. But we're not talking about, can we grow crops anymore? Are we going to be confronted with not only high prices for food but bare shelves? We're not being confronted with any of that, and so the basic tack of the government is to say, don't tell anybody, and the excuse they give to those forced to participate in the cover-up, like weathermen or whatever TV announcers, that panic is a big fear. If you don't want babies left abandoned in the middle of the street while people run for the hills and this kind of thing, keep everybody in their jobs, keep everybody paying taxes. Panic is the big worry. Well, actually, if you dissect what they're doing, they're making it easy for themselves. They don't want your messy panic. They don't want you in the roadways when they need to drive to their bunkers. They don't want a confrontation, like, I'm paying my taxes. I know you've prepared a bunker and stocked it well. Where's my bed? Where's my bunker? What you're doing with my taxes. They don't want those kind of questions. So the reason for the Iraq War, in fact, according to the Zetas, was so that the Bush administration, Bush family cronies, could be in charge of the Middle East oil fields when the pole shift happened. Now, the Zetas have been accused of giving a wrong date. They said shortly after May 15th, 2003, we'll have the pole shift. Well, Planet X arrived in that spring, and by May 15th it was close to the sun, but it put on the brakes and began to creep past the sun. But they pushed the Bush administration into going into Iraq early. Remember, it was March and April that they went in. The UN inspectors weren't done. They had to go in, and the invasion happened. Why? Because they wanted the U.S. military not only for the Iraq oil fields, but the Iran and the Saudi oil fields. Those three pools are the largest known. If you go like 1, 2, 3, 4 of the biggies, they're in there with known reserves already tapped, and not a heck of a lot standing between the U.S. military and the right, of ownership.
In fact, wasn't there actually a military maneuver or some type of an operation that took place during that time that was referred to as Operation Planet
X? Yes, there was. And I think it happened on May 15th, too, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, absolutely. They showed that the DOD showed that they had heard about it. And the idea was, according to the Zetas, they said, yes, it was a white lie. We didn't have the passage. We had a arrival, but not the passage. But we considered it worth it, because we wanted to show everybody what the Bush administration was up to. They not only did that, but they prevented weapons of mass destruction from being planted over there. And there was an attempt at that. There was a lot of radioactivity, soldiers dying of that. There was a CIA op when they sent in 100 people with some nukes. They were going to plant them. Then they were going to say, oh, look, we found them. Something went awry. The soldiers got exposed to all this radioactivity, died from it. They were so radioactive that their family couldn't even visit them in the hospital. They had to, behind windows and things, and the nukes disappeared. So the Zetas said benign aliens were given the right from the Council of Worlds to, abort that, prevent that from happening, and to run off with these nukes. So it got exposed in the press, but the weapons of mass destruction that were supposed to be there were never found. So the Bush administration, it fell apart. It died of old age, the Iraqi invasion. It died because the justifications weren't there, and they in this way they prevented what was considered an imbalance in the world by the Council of Worlds. Too much negative, selfish domination and control and enslavement of mankind. And so it was countered to give man a better balance, so that the good-hearted would have hope, that they could make a difference and continue to press in that direction.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about UFO sightings. Eyewitness accounts of these sightings have certainly become a routine occurrence in recent years. We're hearing more about large, strange-shaped objects with multiple pulsating lights hovering over populated regions of the northern hemisphere, specifically the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And although the government doesn't want to speculate on what these eyewitness accounts might actually be, it seems apparent that something quite extraordinary is developing, something that can't be explained in any specific terms. Would you say that these reports of UFO observations are believable, and if so, what are we to make of why these alien visitors are making themselves known more frequently, and what is their message, if indeed they have one, that they are trying to convey to the inhabitants of this planet?
Sure. And they've stated since the start of Zeta Talk, which started in 1995, at that time I was 55 years of age and was only just realizing that, if you can believe that I was a contactee. I was a sleeper until 55 years of age, and all this was in my subconscious only.
You actually had an alien experience when you were a younger child,
yes,
right?
And actually, and recall, I encountered them when I was 7, 8 years old or so as a little girl down in a swamp. Here, right here in central Wisconsin, but I had it was all recorded only in my subconscious, and I had just people say, well, how often? Well, I wouldn't have to say now. Of course, it's a daily, or many times a day. But in those days, I would say a few times a year. That I would have meet with them for some reason. But when I was a child,